Welcome back to Sciencing. In this module, I'm going to be going over developing a research question like a pro, although I'll call it an inquiry statement, but that's just differences in grammar. Research is, after all about asking questions. And while I review research, so read other people's research, as part of my job, when I'm planning out my own research or writing a literature review, which is synthesizing other people's and my own work. But, and this is where you come in, or at least how this is relevant to you, I also do this as part of my decision-making process around things like what I eat, how I exercise, what supplements I take or don't take, whether to give my daughter a certain medication, and many other examples. So in this clip, I'll look at some tools that I use and that you can use to ask better research-related questions, and thereby hopefully get more useful answers. In your case, I'm assuming from existing research. We do research precisely because we have questions. Questions that we think are important to answer in a rigorous way. You will also have questions that you want good answers for, if indeed there are good answers out there. And a good place to start any research, whether it's new, your own experiment, if you're in the business, or reviewing existing research, place to start is a carefully thought out statement of inquiry, or you can phrase it as a question. This is equally true, as I've been saying, for what we call primary research, meaning original work, and for secondary research, meaning a review, basically reading existing research to come up with an answer. It's also equally true for qualitative work and quantitative research. Mostly this series will focus on quantitative research. That is where my background is. That is where I can speak from a degree of authority. A well-crafted inquiry statement lays the foundation of research by helping to determine the appropriate frame of inquiry. Should the research be qualitative, quantitative, or a mixture of both? In other words, should the research you're looking for and then reading be one or both of the broad categories, qualitative or quantitative? A well-crafted inquiry statement may also inform the appropriate design of that research. Should it be qualitative research, the methodology, or if it's quantitative, study design. And you can learn about different quantitative study designs in other videos. Assuming you are doing secondary research, meaning reviewing existing research to address your inquiry or question, then a well-crafted inquiry statement also helps you to develop an appropriate search strategy. There is a lot of research out there, and you want to be able to find what's relevant as quickly as possible. So you're not going through hundreds of potential hits. You're maybe only going through dozens. It depends on how well researched your area is as to exactly how much you'll find. But you want to refine that as much as possible without risking missing a lot of the good stuff. There are some tools that can help formulate a sound inquiry statement or research question. And we'll look at one for qualitative research first for the sake of completeness. The acronym here is PICO, P-I-C and little o, which stands for population, interest, and context. First, we want to know who we are interested in. For example, is it infants? Is it older children? Is it adults? Is it mothers? People with a specific profession? People with a specific condition? Or even people with a specific experience? What defines our population? Now here, clearly, we are not talking about the population of a country or a region. We are talking about who fits the specific criteria that make them, or make data collected from this group, relevant to what we're interested in. Keep in mind that qualitative research can also explore. It could be looking at documents, it could be looking at adverts, for example, files, even video. So the word population has to be interpreted very broadly in some cases. Interest, in other words, what are you specifically interested in? What is the phenomena, the event, the experience, the activity, or the process of interest? Ideally, you want to be quite clear on that. And then, well, context. What characteristics, other than the specific population and the specific interest, is important? Is place important? Are you only interested in research from New Zealand or some other country? Or is your inquiry specific to what happens at an A&E or a specific business? Population, context, and interest can sometimes overlap, but all should be very clear from your framing of your inquiry statement or the framing of your research question. What you're interested in should have all these components if we're dealing with qualitative research. A similar tool exists for quantitative health-related research in the form of PCOS, not to be confused with the condition. Again, we have population. There's nothing different there. Then there is the intervention. To be clear on what I mean by intervention, maybe look at the module on randomized controlled trials, and I'll link to that at the end. There's our comparison. Again, I refer you to the module on randomized controlled trials and also on placebo and nocebo effect. Outcomes is what are we measuring? Is it the number of heart attacks? Is it cholesterol levels? Is it weight loss? Is it muscle gain? Is it mood? What are the outcomes of interest? What is being measured? And finally, we might have a specific study design in mind, depending on what we want to know. Do we want to know how common something is? A cross-sectional study design is appropriate. Do we want to know if one treatment works better than another, or a treatment works better than placebo? Then we're looking at a randomized controlled trial. So we can specify that, and that will further refine our search strategy and make it more efficient. There is a caution. While we want to be reasonably specific, we don't want to be too broad, because that can easily result in an overwhelming amount of information, much of it maybe not entirely relevant, it becomes impractical, or we can be too narrow, too specific. Okay, we wouldn't look for the effect of a certain medication only on 18-year-olds, but we might be interested in people 18 to 30, for example. That's a bit more realistic. Good, clear inquiry statements or research questions build on the foundations of good research. We want to be clear on our frame of inquiry, qualitative, quantitative, or both in some cases. The methodology, if we're talking qualitative studies, or the research design. So does it need to be observational? Does it need to be experimental? Again, check out the clips on those. We want to formulate a clear search strategy as a result of the very clear inquiry statement or question. And we want to make sure that that statement and that strategy makes it easier and quicker to locate relevant research. That is the hallmark, really, of a good, clear research question, which in turn will make it quicker and easier to identify the relevant research. When we are looking through those results in a search engine, we can hopefully very quickly go through the titles, occasionally the abstracts, to tell us what is relevant and worth reading in more detail. And I have a module on how to read a primary research paper, so check that out if you're not familiar. It directs us. A good question directs us in research as in life. So hopefully you did find this useful, in which case please hit like and subscribe, and most importantly, keep learning, keep watching the modules of this series. If this is the first one, then do check out some of the other fundamentals